Hello everyone. I'm now making a new series of videos talking about controversial movies. This will consist of movies that have caused discussion due to their content and/or their production, and me determining whether this is warranted, or at the very least, understandable. For these videos, I'll be setting out a structure for each segment. 1. Why is the movie controversial? 2. Is the controversy understandable and/or warranted? 3. What do I think of the movie as a whole? And 4. Is it worth watching? So it won't just be a summary of the controversy. I will also be providing my own opinion on the movie, and also whether or not I believe it to be worth watching. But keep in mind, aside from the first segments, these videos are just my opinion. You're allowed to disagree with them. You may believe the controversy is warranted when I don't, or not warranted when I do. You may not like a movie I do, or like a movie I don't, and all these are perfectly fine. And since a lot of these movies are controversial for disturbing topics, you may want to click on another video if the topics mentioned in the opening of each video are triggering for you, as I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. Doing so would defeat the purpose of the video. I will censor explicit content as to not run into any trouble with YouTube censors, but I won't censor discussion of the topics themselves. So, let's start this series with Stanley Kubrick's 1971 dystopian crime film, Clockwork Orange. Released in 1971 in America and 1972 in Britain, A Clockwork Orange was a box office success, grossing $114 million worldwide. It was also the most popular film of 1972 in France, with over 7 million admissions. Despite its financial success and recognition at several award shows, A Clockwork Orange polarised critics and was highly controversial due to its graphic violence. In its USA original release in 1972, A Clockwork Orange was given an X rating. After Kubrick removed 30 seconds of sexually explicit footage, the re-release was given an R rating. New Yorker film critic Pauline Kael called the film pornographic because of how it dehumanized Alex's victims while highlighting his suffering. She also noted the extended scene in which Billy Boy's gang strip and rape a woman, claiming it was included to arouse the audience. In countries such as Ireland, Singapore, South Africa, South Korea, Brazil, Malta, and the Canadian provinces of Alberta and Nova Scotia, the film was banned either immediately or shortly after release, but eventually released in cinemas years to decades later. In Brazil, it was released in 1978 as a version with black dots covering the genitals and breasts of the actors in nude scenes. And in South Africa, it was released in 1984 with one cut. In Malta, the film was unbanned in 2000 and shown in local cinemas. The film was brought up during the investigation on the rape and murder of Paulina Demska in 2022, when the accused attacker compared himself to Alex. But the most notable and notorious controversy surrounding the film was in Britain, where, despite the film being released uncut in 1971, the authorities considered the film's sexual violence extreme. In March 1972, the film was accused of influencing a 14-year-old boy to kill a classmate. It was also accused of influencing a 16-year-old boy to murder an elderly homeless person. The boy pleaded guilty after telling police that friends had told him of the film, and the beating up of an old boy like this one. Roger Gray, for the defence, told the court that the link between this crime and sensational literature, particularly A Clockwork Orange, is established beyond reasonable doubt. The film was also blamed for a rape, in which the attacker sung Singing in the Rain as singing in the rape. Following his family receiving death threats and protesters outside their home, Kubrick asked Warner Bros. To withdraw the film from British release. He stated, "To try and fasten any responsibility on art as the cause of life seems to me to put the case the wrong way round. Art consists of reshaping life, but it does not create life, nor cause life. Furthermore, to attribute powerful suggestive qualities to a film is at odds with the scientifically accepted view that, even after deep hypnosis, in a post-hypnotic state, people cannot be made to do things which are at odds with their natures." From then until Kubrick's death in 1999, the film was very difficult to watch in the UK. In 1993, then Cinema Scala was successfully sued by Warner Bros. For an unauthorised screening of the film, and went bankrupt as a result, later being turned into a nightclub. The same year, Channel 4 broadcast an episode of Without Walls, titled Forbidden Fruit, which was a documentary about the film's withdrawal in Britain, in which its host, Tony Parsons, travelled to Paris to see the film. After Kubrick's death in 1999, the film was re-released theatrically, on VHS, and on DVD, and has remained legal ever since. So, what's my opinion of the controversy? I'm mostly going to be addressing the controversy the film caused in Britain for this part. But for the most part, I don't think the controversy with this film was warranted. The film was rated X, which prohibited anyone under 18 from seeing it. This was above the age of the boys who were investigated and/or convicted of killing. I can understand not initially wanting to release the film on physical media. The film came out prior to the Video Recordings Act 1984. Before this Act of Parliament, home videos did not need to have age ratings on them, meaning that anyone could buy them, and led to the term video nasties to describe films based on VHS that had been criticised for their violent content. I can see how the film would have had a harmful impact on those under 18, and frankly you'd have to be insane to give this film any lower than the equivalent of an 18 certificate. So not releasing it on VHS before 1984 would have seemed like a wise decision. But the film was rated X for a reason. It was inappropriate for anyone under 18. And it very easily could have continued to play in cinemas where there was a legal obligation to classify the film, especially given how successful the film was in the UK. But even when Parliament passed the Video Recordings Act 1984, the film remained banned, despite the fact that it could be released on VHS with an 18 certificate, preventing anyone under that age from buying it. And if you want to make the argument that a parent could buy it and their kid could watch it, to that I say, parents need to keep an eye on what their kids watch, and not give them access to films and shows that are inappropriate. Regarding Pauline Kael's review of the film, I do agree that the film dehumanises Alex's victims. But I think the reason for this is that the film is from Alex's perspective. And from his perspective, none of the people in his life are humans to him, whether victims or not. Even the girls he had the consensual three-way with are not real people to him, merely sexual objects for his own pleasure. I really don't think the Billy Boy gang rape scene was added in to arouse the audience. You'd have to be fucked in the head to be aroused by the sight of a woman being forcefully stripped and raped. However, while I don't find the scene gratuitous, I do think it could have been cut down, as I don't need to sit through a minute and 20 seconds of a woman being stripped and raped to comprehend that she was raped. Looking at much of the controversy with the film, that's the one part that I do agree with to some extent. Otherwise, I don't think the controversy is warranted, and I feel like Kubrick withdrew the film from British viewership under pressure from protesters and death threats. Adults have the capacity to determine that violence is not gleeful, and A Clockwork Orange does not glorify it in any way. Alex is written as a villain, and not someone you're supposed to root for. He does celebrate his acts of violence, but that's because he's a sadist. While teens are more impressionable, and may get the wrong message from watching it, it was never meant to be viewed by them. You don't want impressionable teens to watch films that might indirectly influence them to commit acts of violence. Classify it with an 18 certificate. Don't let them into screenings. Don't sell them physical copies. And if you're a parent or guardian, keep your physical copies out of their reach. So, now that I've voiced my thoughts regarding the controversy, what do I think of the film as a whole? I first watched A Clockwork Orange when I was 18. At the time, I considered it a disturbing but thought-provoking masterpiece that commented on what could happen if we let violence and misogyny go unnoticed. 5 years later, it's an opinion I stand by, but there's more to it than just that. A Clockwork Orange is about dominance. It's something that every major character in the film craves at some point. The film's protagonist Alex DeLarge is a sadist, and Malcolm McDowell is phenomenal in the role, really representing the creepy, psychopathic, and overall despicable personality of the character. He and his fellow droogs take pride in drinking Milk Plus, this being milk laced with drugs, and beating up and/or raping strangers. But Alex is not a team player. He not only takes pride in beating up rivals, such as Billy Boy and his gang, but also wants dominance over his own gang. While he does not oppose the ideas of his fellow droogs, as shown by him asking Georgie to explain his idea for breaking into the cat lady's house, he does oppose them telling him what to do. When Dim and Georgie try to have a say in what they should and shouldn't do, Alex beats them both up. Alex is no ordinary sadist. He is a sadist who wants to build a dystopia that he has control over, having the freedom to attack or fuck whoever he wants. Humanizing villains is something that exists in a lot of films and TV shows, and I think it works really well when not overdone. A notable example would be Blue Velvet's Frank Booth, who, much like Alex, is a drug-handling rapist. While an evil, frightening, and irredeemable character, Frank is shown to have vulnerable emotions, genuinely tearing up when seeing his victim Dorothy sing Blue Velvet. Humanizing villains works to show that even though they are capable of actions that would be deemed inhuman, they are ultimately human beings, and it reminds us that we as humans are capable of the barbaric actions that these evil characters, and sometimes film depictions of real people, commit. While the film does a good job at showing Alex's evil and sadistic tendencies, it also humanizes him. While Alex sees everyone around him as inhuman, he does care for his pet snake, and treats it more humanely than the humans around him. It reminds us that Alex is indeed a human being, and brings us back to the scary part of reality that sadistic people like him do indeed exist. But as well as Alex, the government also want dominance. They established a Ludovico technique program, designed to rehabilitate criminals. Their real goal? to remove violent tendencies from real people so that they can put violence into their own hands. When Alex completes the program, he is still evil, but seemingly unable to act on it, not fighting back against an actor who taunts and attacks him, and becoming ill at the sight of a naked woman. The prison chaplain had opposed the program, voicing his belief that good comes from within. When Alex returns home, he finds his room has been rented out, and he is later attacked by the homeless man he beat up years prior. In Alex's quest to control the dystopia he was building up, he ended up becoming vulnerable to the dystopia, not only being attacked by the homeless man, but also by a group of other homeless people. The homeless man had been attacked by a group of droogs. Now the leader of the droogs is being attacked by a group of homeless people. Alex is saved by 2 police officers, only to realise they are his former droogs, Dim and Georgie. They drive him to the countryside and frequently beat him while trying to drown him in a bathtub. In today's times, when police brutality has been more publicised, Dim and Georgie becoming police officers so that they have the power to hurt people is a plot point that has aged like fine wine, and adds to the theme of dominance, and how the authorities want to put violence into their own hands, while wanting control over the actions and thoughts of the public. When Alex stumbles across the house of Frank Alexander, the author who he crippled and raped the wife of years before, Mr. Alexander recognises him from the newspapers, and intends to use him as a political weapon to oppose the Ludovico technique. Alex sings Singing in the Rain in the bathtub, giving Mr. Alexander PTSD from the attack, and prompting him to hypocritically use the Ludovico technique against Alex, which causes him to attempt suicide. I've heard a theory that Alex only pretends to be vulnerable, which makes sense. Why else would he sing the same song he sung while committing sadistic acts of violence? It also adds to the film's theme of dominance. Alex has to pretend to be vulnerable as to not be returned to prison, being shaped into a robot released by the government. The government institutionalised Mr. Alexander following this, and the minister, not wanting to risk losing his credibility, offers Alex a job, provided that Alex cooperates with his election campaign. In order to survive, Alex must remain a robot of the government, but his contemplations of violence and vivid thoughts of sexual intercourse imply that he also has the freedom to return to his wicked ways. While not becoming the dictator of a dystopia like he'd hoped, he will maintain some dominance and be able to act on his sadistic thoughts, albeit being beneath the government's dominance. Released over 5 decades ago, A Clockwork Orange is what I would describe as a warning for the future. A warning about dominance, and the different people that seek it. A warning about how criminals cannot necessarily be rehabilitated. A warning about how we should pay close mind to the ideologies of politicians, in case they were to find their way to the highest authority levels, and use their position to inflict dominance, and try to silence those who try to expose them. So, with all this said, let's get on to the final question regarding this piece of controversial cinema.
Oh, that's why they call it that.
A Clockwork Orange is definitely not for everyone, and certainly not for under 18s. That said, if you're over 18 and comfortable with graphic and/or disturbing content, I would strongly recommend this movie. It's a highly unpleasant, but also very interesting film, and a superb commentary on dominance and abuse of power. I've thought strongly of it ever since I saw it, and hopefully, you will too. Initially playing for limited runs in drive-in cinemas in 1978 as Day of the Woman, the film eventually received a wide release in 1980, titled I Spit on Your Grave. The film was lambasted by critics, with Roger Ebert giving it a rare 0 out of 4 stars, and calling it a vile bag of garbage without a shred of artistic distinction, and later the worst film of all time. The film was protested by feminists and accused of glorifying rape. The MPAA tried to prevent the film's producers from using the R rating. After they gave the film an R rating, producer Joseph Sabida added rape scenes, making it an X-rated movie. An agreement was reached where the film removed any references or explicit shots referring to anal rape, and the MPAA restored the original R rating. In an interview with Fangoria, director Miyazaki said in response to the backlash, "Frankly, I'm not concerned whether it receives bad press or not. It doesn't touch me one way or the other whatsoever. If you told me that the public does not like it and the critics like it, then there is something very, very bad about that. Who am I reaching? 300 critics across the United States? Or 2,000 around the world? It's really the public that counts, the 20 million who have seen the film around the globe." The film was banned and/or edited in several countries, with Ireland continuing to ban the film to this day. The censored American version of the film was released in Australia in 1982 with an R18 rating. In 1987, the film survived an appeal to ban it, and continued to be sold until 1997, when another reclassification caused its ban in the country. In 2004, the full uncut version was awarded an R18, with the Office of Film and Literature Classification justifying this decision by reasoning that castration is not sexual violence, due to their censorship law forbidding the release of films depicting sexual violence as acceptable or justified. In the United Kingdom, the censors refused it a cinema certificate. As a result, The film was released straight to video due to VHS releases not needing age certificates at the time, and was branded a video nasty by the press. It was on the Director of Public Prosecution's list of prosecutable films until 2001, when a heavily cut version that extensively edited the rape scenes was released with an 18 certificate, with 7 minutes and 2 seconds of the film being cut. The film was re-edited in 2011, with only 2 minutes and 54 seconds of cuts, so that only the scenes of rape that focus on Jennifer's nudity have been banned since 2011. But is all this criticism and controversy warranted? Absolutely. In most countries the film has been released in, it's been classified with an 18 certificate, or the equivalent. That would definitely be the absolute minimum age one should be to watch this, though my advice would be to not watch this film at all. But we'll get to this in the next 2 segments. While I believe most of the controversy with A Clockwork Orange to be unwarranted, and I'm glad it was re-released uncut in the UK in 2000, I Spit on Your Grave should have remained banned, and I'm not at all shocked that they had to edit parts of it to get a UK release. Director Miyazaki has defended the film, saying that the violent nature of the film was necessary to tell the story, and described leading actress Camille Keaton as brave for taking on the role. In my video on A Clockwork Orange, I stated that I didn't need to sit through 1 minute and 20 seconds of a woman being raped to comprehend that she was raped, that being the only area of controversy with that film that I agree with to some extent. I Spit on Your Grave shows Jennifer being raped for more than 20 minutes over the course of 3 individual scenes. Why do we need to sit through 3 extended scenes of Jennifer being raped to realise she was raped? So, it's safe to say that I do agree with the controversy, but what do I think of the film as a whole? Absolute fucking dog shit. I don't have a problem with depictions of violence in film, but I Spit on Your Grave has no merit to its violence. A Clockwork Orange uses violence to comment on dominance and sadism. Taxi Driver, Fight Club, American Psycho and Joker serve as commentaries on how society has impacted the mentalities of their protagonists. Saving Private Ryan uses violence to show not only how barbaric war is, but also to give insight into what the protagonists know they're risking in order to save their titular Private Ryan. Using violence for laughs or satisfaction is also a thing, and it works when the violence is unrealistic, such as in Tom and Jerry and Deadpool, and or when it happens to a character who deserves it. I Spit on Your Grave is violent, but says nothing about violence, nor does it have any underlying layers within the script as a whole, and it couldn't be construed as dark comedy either, because Jennifer does nothing to deserve it. Despite Camille Keaton's committed performance, and the only reason this film is not completely worthless, Jennifer Hills is such a poorly written protagonist, whose only fleshed out trait is that she's seeking revenge on her rapists. The film does briefly explore her being a writer, but it only comes up at the beginning, and when her rapists rip up her manuscript, not even serving any purpose to her revenge plan. Her ways of getting revenge on her rapists are utterly baffling in execution, no pun intended. But most especially in the case of Johnny. She seductively directs him to enter her car, then halfway back to her house, she points a gun at him and orders him to remove her clothes. Johnny says her being raped was her fault because she was wearing revealing clothing. Instead of just killing him right there, she pretends to believe this, and then invites him back to her house, where they have a bath together, and where Jennifer stands naked in the mirror for God knows how long, probably just so the viewer could take in Camille Keaton's nudity. Then she enters the bath and gives him a handjob, before severing his genitals, leading him to bleed to death before dumping his body in the basement. Why did she not shoot him in the forest? The film also has no artistic merit whatsoever. There's no compelling symbolism, no interesting shots or visuals, nothing. It's a film that literally anyone could direct, not that most people would want to though. So, in case you hadn't guessed, I hate this film, and almost everything about it. But how would I write it, if I had to? Well, my first idea stems from director Miyazaki's alleged inspiration for the film, in which he stated he helped a young woman who'd been raped in New York. He said that he, a friend and his daughter were driving by a park when they saw a young woman crawl out of the bushes bloodied and naked. They picked her up, returned her home, and decided to take her to the police rather than the hospital, not wanting the attackers to escape and find further victims. They quickly realised they had made the wrong decision. The officer, who Zaki described as not fit to wear the uniform, delayed taking her to the hospital, instead insisting she follow formalities such as giving her full name and the spelling, despite her jaw being broken and her hardly being able to speak. Zaki insisted that the officer take her to the hospital, and he eventually complied. Soon afterward, the woman's father wrote both Zaki and his friend a letter of thanks for helping his daughter. The father offered a reward, which Zaki refused. I honestly have no idea why this wasn't the film. Especially for the time, it would address the awfulness of rape, with the underlying theme of police incompetence, and present the rescuers with an interesting conflict as to whether to take her to hospital or to the police first. In writing it this way, this could also allow for time to flesh out the personality and interests of the victim, as to not have her be reduced to being a rape victim. So, with all this said, do I believe the movie to be worth watching in any way, shape or form?
absolutely
When it's not Wait a minute.
fucking absolutely fucking not.
When it's not gratuitously disturbing, I Spit on Your Grave is just dull to watch. I've never dedicated part of any of my videos to talking about a film with a rating of less than 2 out of 10. None of the DreamWorks or Disney films I watched for ranking videos were less than a 2 out of 10. I Spit on Your Grave has the dishonour of being the worst film that I've talked about on this channel to date, not counting brief mentions of films like Freddy Got Fingered or Movie 43, which are even worse than this film. As mentioned before, it would be a 0 out of 10, but Camille Keaton's performance gives it a single point. 1 out of 10. Do not recommend. Released 50 years ago, Taxi Driver is regarded as one of the best and most culturally significant films ever made. It's also a controversial film for several reasons, including ones that extend years beyond its original release in 1976. Is its acclaim warranted? And are its controversies warranted? Well, let's get into these. When the film came out, there was concern over then 12-year-old Jodie Foster's role as a child sex worker, as well as her presence during the violent climax. For the climax, Foster said she was present during the setup and staging of the special effects used during the scene, the entire process being explained and demonstrated to her step by step. Foster said she was fascinated by the behind-the-scenes preparation that went into the scene. Before being given the part, Foster was subjected to psychological training, attending sessions with a UCLA psychiatrist to ensure she wouldn't be scarred by her role. This was in accordance with California Labor Board requirements monitoring children's well-being on film sets. Years after the film came out, Foster confessed how uncomfortable the treatment of her character was on set. As director Martin Scorsese didn't know how to approach different scenes with Foster, he relied on leading actor Robert De Niro to deliver his directions to her. Foster said that De Niro became a mentor to her, and that her acting career was massively influenced by his advice during filming. In 1981, a man named John Hinckley Jr. was arrested for his attempted assassination of then US President Ronald Reagan, for which he was found not guilty by reason of insanity. Hinckley and his lawyer claimed that Taxi Driver influenced his decision. Hinckley was obsessed with the film, and with Foster, and following many failed attempts to get her attention, he decided to assassinate Reagan, believing the infamy would make him appeal to her. When Scorsese learned of this, he briefly considered quitting filmmaking due to the situation casting the film in a negative light. The climax of the film was considered intensely graphic by the MPAA, and they considered giving the film an X rating. To get the film an R rating, Scorsese had the colours desaturated, removing the brightness of the blood. While Scorsese said he considered the colour change an improvement on the original scene, Michael Chapman, who did the cinematography, expressed regret about the decision, and was disappointed in how no prints with the unmuted colours exist anymore, as the originals have since deteriorated. So, are these controversies warranted? I don't believe using the film to claim it influenced attempted assassination is warranted. The film doesn't paint Travis's planned assassination of Palantine as justified, but rather, something he does in an attempt to get Betsy, and society in general, to notice him, albeit through infamy. Despite this, he also genuinely wants to help Iris get out of the sex work industry. Hinckley's actions represented the men objectifying Iris, through his obsession with the then minor Foster, and the bad side of Travis, wanting to gain infamy to gain the recognition of someone he was obsessed with, neither of which are glorified by the film. In regards to the rating controversy, the X rating has an interesting history. When the MPAA was established in 1968, the X rating was given to a film if submitted to the association. Alternatively, due to its non-trademark status, it could be self-applied to a film by a distributor that knew beforehand that the film contained content unsuitable for minors. For over a decade, many mainstream films were given an X rating, with some films, such as Midnight Cowboy and A Clockwork Orange, being re-released with an R rating due to minor cuts. As the X rating wasn't trademarked, anyone could use it, and it was used a lot for pornographic films during the 70s, with some pornographers using XX or XXX to give the impression of the film having more graphic sexual content than the simple X rating. As a result, mainstream films that were given an X rating received less advertising and were played in less cinemas, with films such as RoboCop having to be re-edited to get an R rating and not an X rating. This led to the MPAA finally establishing the trademarked NC-17 rating, a rating that had the same rules as the X rating, but could only be applied by the MPAA themselves. It's hard to say if the violence in this film, even with an edit containing bright coloured blood, would get an NC-17 rating now. There have been films in the 21st century that have been rated NC-17 for violence, or had to edit violence to avoid the rating. When Kill Bill Volume 1 was submitted to the MPAA, Quentin Tarantino had to partially re-edit the House of Blue Leaves fight scene in black and white to avoid an NC-17 rating. Since this film came out, however, we have had various scenes of violence that are probably just as violent, if not more so than the climax of Taxi Driver, and similarly, played seriously and not for laughs. A notable example is the 2017 film Logan, where the excessive violence gets more graphic as it goes on, and is always taken seriously. Another example is 2019's Joker, a film that has been frequently compared to Taxi Driver, which features a rather graphic scene, which I won't show you to avoid spoilers as well as violence, in which a character is stabbed in the eye and neck, and has his head bashed against a wall. Both these films are rated R by the MPAA. Here in the UK, although the film is rated 18, this is for very strong sex references and child prostitution theme, whereas the violence is considered to be appropriate for a 15, although this is the desaturated violence. And yeah, considering the depiction of a sexualized minor, albeit not in a way that the film actively glorifies, I think it should remain an 18. The controversy regarding the casting of Foster is certainly understandable, and the casting is not something that would fly today. Nor should it. You would definitely have to make changes to remake this film today, but I'm not going to say what those changes are, because I don't want to give Hollywood the answer to how to remake this. So, with some warranted, and some unwarranted controversies, what do I think of the film as a whole? Taxi Driver is a phenomenal film. Something that really stands out to me is how amazing the shots of Travis at night look. They utilise contrast incredibly well, and you can always see what's happening on screen. Being able to see what's happening should be common sense, but a lot of films nowadays don't seem to have that. I like the way the film shows close-ups on Travis as he drives around New York City, further emphasising the film being from his perspective, right down to the final shot where he notices something glaring in his rearview mirror, indicating that his mental state will deteriorate all over again. As mentioned before, the final shootout scene was desaturated to get an R rating, and while I do feel sorry for Michael Chapman, I think the desaturated colours add to the graininess and gritty atmosphere. Jodie Foster's performance was critically acclaimed, earning her an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress, a rare accomplishment for child actors, but definitely a warranted one. She genuinely conveyed the innocence, confusion, and vulnerability of the young Iris, which added to my desire to see her get out of the sex industry, with or without Travis's help. She also successfully conveys what is almost definitely trauma after Travis kills her abusers right in front of her. And then there's Robert De Niro. And honestly, what a performance. He genuinely convinced me that Travis is deprived of sleep and spiralling into insanity. He even prepared for the role by getting a taxi driver license and collecting fares late at night. And Travis Bickle is an intriguing protagonist. It's hard to call him sympathetic on account of the dangerous path he goes down, but I can call him empathetic on account of what sends him down the dangerous path. A former US Marine who served in the Vietnam War, Travis was given an honourable discharge in 1973. He lives a life of loneliness and insomnia, and takes a job as a taxi driver to occupy his time. Working overnight shifts almost every night, Travis often picks up pimps and drug addicts, who he finds disgusting and infuriating, and wants them off the streets. He becomes attracted to a woman named Betsy, who works for presidential candidate and US Senator Charles Palantine. Although getting a second date, it blows up in his face when he takes her to see a porn film, disgusting her, and making her not want to see him again. At one point, Travis has a passenger played by Martin Scorsese, who talks about killing his wife due to her adultery. The casting is symbolic, as it parallels with Scorsese directing De Niro, and the passenger giving Travis inspiration to go down a murderous path. Wanting to be recognised by Betsy, Travis begins planning to assassinate Palantine, and buys several guns, does insane physical training, and practices an intimidating presence in the mirror to use on people who challenge him, leading to this famous improv line from De Niro.
You talking to me?
He also learns of Iris Steensma, who was a child being sexually exploited by her pimp and clients, and tries to convince her to leave. Eventually, Travis attends a rally with the intention of killing Palantine, but is noticed by Secret Service agents and flees. He instead goes to the brothel where Iris works, and kills the men complicit in her exploitation, much to her horror. He tries to shoot himself, but finds he has no bullets, and slumps on the couch until the police arrive. There's common discussion about whether the ending of the film really happens, or if it's Travis's dying dream, so let's look at what happens and determine which one is more likely. Travis accomplished recognition through his actions, but not in the way he expected. Had he killed Palantine as planned, he would have been labelled a villain by the media. Because he failed, and saved Iris from her abusers, he's been labelled a hero, and Iris's parents have written him a thank you letter, telling him Iris is safe and in school. After reconciling with Betsy, and giving her a free ride home, he becomes agitated by something in his rearview mirror, hinting that he will return to his dangerous roots, and go down a path where he will kill the politician, and be labelled a villain. Travis does fall unconscious and then wake up later on, which supports the claim of it being a dying dream. In addition, Iris's parents send a letter to Travis, saying she is safe and doing well in school, What isn't mentioned is her, almost certainly, feeling traumatised over witnessing the deaths right in front of her, as Travis wouldn't think of it that way. On the other hand, it can be argued that Travis did indeed wake up from a coma. Although Iris's safety is indicated, her well-being is not, which could be a case of her parents not acknowledging it in their letter to Travis. Iris had run away from her parents before, stating she believed her parents hated her, which could come down to her having issues in the past that they ignored, even if they did genuinely love her. A similar thing could be the case with her returning to school, but her parents, although being happy about her return, being ignorant of any trauma she felt about what she had been through and witnessed, especially given that she had been through it all as a child. This can also refer to the ignorance of society, where they praise Travis for saving Iris, but gloss over the way he did it, and also remain unaware of his initial plan to kill Palantine. And also, Travis being agitated by something in his rearview mirror doesn't seem like something in a dream of being labelled a hero, and this is why I consider the ending to be real. So, with all this said, is the film worth watching? Absolutely. While some of its controversy is warranted, Taxi Driver is a great film as a whole. Should it have won Best Picture over Rocky? I'll answer that question next year.